Welcome to the CloverCast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Stephen Jones, giving you the most Celtics information in the least amount of time. You are getting an overcast of the Boston Celtics, and this is your weekly CloverCast. All right, we would review last week, but the season hasn't started yet. So first, let's review this last season as we prepare ourselves for the upcoming Boston Celtics season. Last year began with some big changes for the Boston Celtics. Danny Ainge decided to step down as the president of basketball operations. He was nicknamed Trader Danny for some of the trades he was able to pull off. Brad Stevens got promoted to the new president of basketball operations. He was the Celtics head coach for the last 8 years, made the conference finals 3 times. He had a winning percentage of just over 55%, 354 wins, 282 losses, and then the Celtics went on to hire Ime Udoka as the new head coach, along with an all-new coaching staff. On June 18th, Boston traded away Kemba Walker, a 2021 first-round pick, and a 2025 second-round pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Moses Brown, Al Horford, a 2023 second-round pick, and a TPE, or a traded player exception, which at this point is expired and it can no longer be used. Although it might be worth to note, Kemba Walker is now struggling to find a new team and a new role, while Al Horford will have an impact on this year's title run that is bigger than he's had since he started his career. This was Brad Stevens' first month as the president of basketball operations, and he made this amazing trade, making most people almost forget about Danny. Well, sorta, because Danny now has a job with the Utah Jazz, and he helped negotiate trading away their two prospects, or their two superstars, in Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves and Donovan Mitchell to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And now the Jazz begin a rebuilding mode quite similar to the one he built here in Boston when he traded away Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett to the Nets. But back to Boston in last year's offseason, when they got Moses Brown, he didn't play a single minute. He got traded to Dallas before the season started in exchange for Josh Richardson, but halfway through the season, although Josh Richardson played well, he got traded to the Spurs in exchange for Derek White. And Derek White's made a huge impact. Despite his less flashy numbers, he's got a kind of expensive contract, but a Moses Brown for Derek White trade up, in theory, that's a great trade. During that year's draft, the Celtics picked Johan Begorin in the second round. He stayed overseas in France all last season, and he plans to do that again this season. He did have a really good summer league. Strong numbers, however, it is just a summer league, and he is still young, along with Yam Madar, the point guard out of Israel that the Celtics drafted. We still own the rights to his contract. Either one of them could develop into a contributor in the coming years. But Yam Madar, he's a point guard, and we are very stacked at the point guard position. If you are going to be excited about a young prospect, look at J.D. Davidson. He's another point guard. We are stacked in the point guard position, so I don't know how many minutes he's going to play, but he was drafted by the Celtics in the second round this year, and he's had a solid summer this year and earned himself a two-way contract, which means he'll be playing in Maine for the Maine Celtics in the G League. He'll be allowed to play with the Boston Celtics a maximum of 45 days. Now, that may or may not be days in which the Celtics play, but like I said, they don't really need the point guard position, so we may not see a whole lot of him this year, but seeing a game or two of J.D. Davidson showing off what he's learned so far would be exciting to watch. I'm up for that. Possibly more games if injuries pile up or the right trades happen. There were a lot of transactions last season, and I'm not going to go through them all. Many players came through the books for Boston, but some notable names: Dennis Schroeder, he dropped the bag, could have made so much more money in Los Angeles for the Lakers, declined that offer, wanted to make more, picked up a short contract with Boston for last year, and now I'm not sure what he's going to do. Boston traded him away before the season ended, before the trade deadline was up, and they traded him away to Houston for Daniel Tice. We got Daniel Tice back. Daniel Tice only played for a little while because he ended up getting traded at the end of the season for Malcolm Brogdon, the former Rookie of the Year. And that's another reason why we are so stacked at the point guard position. Last year's team started off really rough. Under 500 record by Christmas. From what we heard, somewhere around January, Ime Udoka, he was refusing to change the way that he coached. And there were some apparent inner fire from some of the players. They turned the season around. They started to listen to what Ime was saying. They started to believe in the system that was being put in front of their place. But we saw them go from this under 500 team to become the second seed in the Eastern Conference. In the first round, they swept Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and the Steve Nash-led Brooklyn Nets. Although those 4 games were pretty tough, they still swept them. 4 games in a row is very impressive, and that's the same team that knocked Boston out of the first round of the playoffs the year before. The second round, Boston beat a Bucks team that were short of Chris Middleton. It took them to Game 7. They got lucky. Who knows with Chris Middleton coming back, how this would play out with him. However, we squeaked by with a win. The same team that that eliminated Boston back in 2019, the Milwaukee Bucks. Now 2020, the team that eliminated Boston was Miami. This year, Boston beat the Miami Heat in 7 games again to win the Eastern Conference Championship and make it to the finals. The finals went 6 games, and the Boston Celtics fell 2 games short of a title, losing the championship to the Golden State Warriors. Now, with this season coming up and the newly signed Danilo Gallinari now injured for the whole season, the Celtics have 1 roster spot to fill. Most are calling for a backup big man. Understandable. Mfiondu Kabengele, who was just signed to the 2-way contract, could help with some big man minutes. But many are looking elsewhere, like Utah and their remaining pieces, or big names like Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, or DeMarcus Cousins. This isn't a problem in my view. I see it as an opportunity that was made available by some wise roster structuring. I see the team in good hands right now. And yes, that's despite the recent news about Ime Udoka. Inappropriate conduct led to the suspension of Ime for the whole season. His return after the suspension is still not certain. But one thing is for sure, the Celtics are not afraid of a whole new coaching staff. They did it last year and they made it to the finals. This year, they don't have a completely new staff. Although assistant Will Hardy went to the Utah Jazz, the interim head coach will be Joe Mazzulla. Now check this out. In 2009, while he was playing in West Virginia, Joe Mazzulla was arrested for domestic battery for allegedly grabbing a woman by the neck at a bar. The year before that, he was charged with underage drinking and fighting with police at a Pittsburgh Pirates game. That was a long time ago. Crazy things, both that happened, and you should not be allowed to take on a leadership role if these are the type of actions that you are in. However, Brad Stevens has apparently forgiven him. That was a long time ago. Mazzulla has reportedly been sober for the past 12 years, and he has not been charged with any other incidents since. Brad Stevens forgave him. Maybe he will forgive Ime. Who knows? But they trust Joe. They love Joe. Everybody in the Celtics organization, he's been there for a few years now. I guess he's grown a lot. The players, the staff, Brad, they all really trust him. Brad was asked if he would go back to being a coach, and Brad said Joe is the best choice by a long shot. Here, let's go over the current depth chart for the upcoming season. This is where it is right now before training camp, before the season starts. Of course, you've got Marcus Smart starting at the point guard position. Malcolm Brogdon, very well capable of starting in that role, but I see Marcus Smart starting and Brogdon coming off the bench. Marcus Smart is the longest tenured Celtic player. He's been here since 2014 when he was drafted 6th overall. And he just won the Defensive Player of the Year award. This is the first time a guard has won this award since Gary Payton back in 1996. Now, Malcolm Brogdon coming off the bench, that's a great bench player, a great sixth man. You should be excited for this. He's a former Rookie of the Year. He's been a dominant, wise player ever since coming into the league. Very good defensive player. He can shoot very well. He's a very high IQ passer. And he's going to take up a lot of shooting guard minutes as well because there's a lack of depth at the shooting guard position. Then you've got Derek White. He's similar to Malcolm in that he can play some shooting guard in some certain lineups. He's a great weapon to have as your third string point guard. And then having Peyton Pritchard as an extra ball handler who can shoot threes from super deep. He's improved every year since being here. So I'm excited to see if there's any minutes for Peyton. I'm not so sure if there are. And of course, J.D. Davidson, we want to see a couple games of him play. So there may be a point guard traded away. This is the reason why a lot of these guys have been mentioned in trade rumors. So that's the point guard spot, and the shooting guard spot, Jaylen Brown. Of course he starts. He does so much for Boston. But that's where it ends. Nobody else clearly fits the bill, so like I said, you go with one of your point guards to back up Jaylen Brown when he's out. Jaylen Brown, he's bigger than most guys at that position, and he keeps getting stronger each year. He's a great passer, a great dribbler. He has improved in both of those categories, as long as every category since he's gotten in this league. He's constantly growing, constantly in the gym. I'm excited to see his growth this season. You could possibly see some Sam Hauser play a little two guard, but most likely not often. Brown can play some small forward too, and he might, but Jason Tatum is the starter there. I'm wondering how close Tatum will be to an MVP this season. Is it too soon? I'm not sure. I don't think so. This year may be it, or at least he will be in the discussion. Bench options behind Tatum. Grant Williams. That's your go-to guy. Sam Hauser. He will likely see a lot more minutes this year, barring another roster move. The newly signed Danilo Gallinari is out for the season. So, you're going to need somebody to fill his minutes. Grant Williams can also play the power forward position, which will be needed because Al Horford needs a break. At age 36, he'll need lots of breaks. I'm pretty sure he could play another 4 or 5 years if things work out, but we need him to rest during the regular season so that he can be well rested and prepared for the playoffs. Tatum's going to back him up at the power forward position at times. Sam Hauser could also play some of those minutes. And Robert Williams, who is the starting center, will miss some time at the beginning of the season. He had some surgery on his knee, some cleanup surgery, and it's nothing serious. He's going to be a lot better once he's able to get out there. Hopefully they don't rush him back, but we do want to see him come back soon. He hasn't improved in a lot of some of the areas of his game that we wanted him to improve in, but that's okay. Rob Williams, the player that he is a huge impact to the Celtics. People are afraid of a guy like that. Love to have him. I'm excited for him. Can't wait for him to come back and start playing. But in the meantime, Al Horford is going to be playing some minutes at the starting center. And in most lineups, I'm pretty sure. Now, who's going to back up Al Horford when he's at the center position? Grant Williams, he can play in some small lineups. Of course, you've got Luke Cornett coming off the bench. I guess Cornett made some very big unseen growths this year. I'm excited to see, or maybe I'm just desperate to see, because we're kind of desperate on another big man addition. This is why everybody's hoping for it, and you see so many trade speculations. But Mfiondu Kabengele, he is another big man that he signed the two-way contract. I already mentioned this. I'm wondering if he's one of the guys that's going to advance up to that full-time roster spot. I'm not so sure. I don't know if they need him to do that. I think that having him to play some early minutes, maybe Luke Cornett play some early minutes and see what we got. And once we're able to apply for a disabled player exception for Danilo Gallinari, it'll allow them to use more money to attract a free agent. I don't think they need to be hasty here with a decision. Uh, a lot of guys came in through the training camp roster. I guess we've got about 20 guys right now on the training camp roster. And I'm not going to go through the whole roster list, but those are some other options that can fill in that full-time roster spot. Or maybe Mfiondu Kabengele gets promoted to that full-time spot, and you use one of these training camp guys to fill in your two-way spot. Many options. Luka Semenik. He was reportedly signed to a training camp deal. He's 6'10". We need a big guy. He played in the G League last year and averaged 28 points, 10.5 rebounds, which is very impressive for a 22-year-old. He was drafted by the Spurs, number 19 overall back in 2019. We'll see what he has to bring in the training camp game, in the practices, and in the preseason. Jake Layman, Justin Jackson, Denzel Valentine are all also on the training camp roster. There's many people competing for that final spot that may or may not be available to any of them. There's a few holes in the roster, but we got plenty of options. In fact, I think we got enough talent for an expansion draft, but we won't get into that now. I have high expectations for Boston this year, as do most of us. Let us know what you think of the Celtics' current situation in the comments below. This team is already together at the facility, at the New Balance facility, working out, improving their game. The preseason starts Sunday, October 2nd. Write that down on your calendar against the Charlotte Hornets at the TD Garden at 1 p.m. There are different ways that you can get this calendar downloaded to your phone, to your computer. You can print it out, put it on your fridge, so you can be up to date with when the games are. However, if you come in and listen to me next week, I'm going to preview that Charlotte Hornets game, and the day after that, the day after the game, I'm going to review that game as well as preview some of the upcoming games. I will be giving you a preview weekly of the games that we have, so you can always tune into me and I will keep you updated with what the schedule is. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so happy that you guys listened to me and were able to soak up some Celtics information. I hope your time was well spent. If it was, please help me out simply by liking this video and subscribing or following me on your streaming platform that you use. It helps me to keep providing you with content like this. And this has been your weekly CloverCast. We'll be back together before you even know it.